Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Mark. It's very good to see you. I am so very glad that you are here. I am glad to be here because, man, it was really making me work for it. I was having some computer difficulties and I ended up rebooting the whole thing, and the system is good now. We are good to go. A few minutes late. Appreciate your patience as we get this thing up and running. It is so very good to see you. And, man, the room is already filling up. It's very, very good. I'm glad that you guys are here. So let us know where you are from. I've seen some people already. Michelle's asking, where is everybody coming from? We've got, let's see, Alexandria, Alex here. I just moved from Alaska to Texas. That's a big move, and probably a timely move because it's like probably pretty cold there right now. Probably cold, pretty cold in Texas right now too, though. They're not used to that cold. Alexandria, love that name, by the way. Great name. From Rochester, Minnesota. Very good, Anna. Nice to have you here. Michelle is in Florida, rubbing it in, and Vinny in SoCal. Oh, Vinny, were you just on the last call? You were on the call at 3 o'clock, I believe. It's good to see you again. All right. Oh, here I am, and let's see, Claudia. Claudia is from London. Hello. We got Marcy joining us from Reno, and Jamie. Hello, hello again. Jamie is from the UK. Yep. Representing London. Glad you could join us. It's late there, Jamie. Are you going to bed soon? It's almost what, coming up on midnight there. Well, glad to have you. Man, she is committed. Or he. I apologize. That could go either way. Kat. Kat again. Hello again. Kat's joining us again from the earlier training. It's good to see you guys. Glad to see you guys. Again coming in. Yes, sir. And then we've got Angie Hodges from Charlotte. Hello, welcome, Angie. And then Vivian from Vancouver. All right. So we've got people spanning quite a few different time zones. Good to see you here. The earlier call, we had a lot of people from, Africa, and a few people from Ireland and the UK, all over the place. All right. Very good to see you guys. So you are here because you are interested in this topic, financial literacy for business owners. I really enjoy covering this specific because it allows me to get a little bit granular, and I don't generally I'm not really, as a strategist, you have to think of how I normally think, and that's normally big picture. And this is one of those areas where I am able to get down into the weeds, which I really enjoy because I enjoy teaching and I enjoy coaching, using the tools of a coach, and really educating people. This is one of the things that I really do enjoy. So for those of you who have followed me for more than a few minutes, you understand I follow the four core functions of business as it looks through the Viper methodology. We'll talk about the Viper methodology here in just a minute, but that Viper framework, we're looking through the four core functions, which is lead gen, sales, operations, and accounting. And I really like getting granular on lead gen, really like getting granular on sales. Obviously, situationally, I like getting granular on the operational and fulfillment function. It just depends on the business, of course. And then this is really my jam. My background is in accounting, and financial literacy is one of my things. But for those of you, let me ask you just a question right out of the gate. How many of you are not numbers people? Like, who are your numbers people? You can just say numbers or not numbers, right? Just go ahead and put it in the chat if you are a numbers person or not numbers person. And either way is fine. Either way is fine. So Michelle is already self-identifying as numbers. That is Alex, you had to put a capital NOT on that. So Alex, just so you guys can see this, she was adamant about not numbers. Oh, wait, hold on a second. That was Kat. Kat is not numbers. Alexandria is very passionate about that. Vivian, not. Okay, so and Lauren, depends on the numbers. That's right. I guess dollars is like makes more sense, right? Not numbers. I'm a pre-start business owner. How can you help me just starting out? And I'm not a numbers person, Claudia. So we're gonna get into some of the details on on the number stuff, the business owner stuff. We're not going to get into too much of that tonight. But we just covered the Business Plans 101. There's plenty of stuff on my YouTube channel. But what I would recommend, I'm just going to drop this in there now, is if you are interested in just having more direct conversation with me, which is a little bit easier, I can do that in the school community. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop that in now so you guys can see that. And that way, I don't forget to cover that later on. But if you guys are interested, let me just copy and paste that and put that in there. That way I can answer some of your business related questions. Now, just letting you know now, my intent at some point is to charge for, just being in the community. Right now, there's no charge for just being in the community. There's charges if you want more access and more skills, but just for being in the community right now, there's no fee. So if you want to join that now, there is nothing, and there's nothing to pay. And Claudia, that could help maybe get you kind of jump started in the business area, because you don't know what you don't know, right? There's just a lot of things to know, but also some things that maybe you don't need to know. And that's one of the things. What I'm building out right now is an entire 90-day, and I'm even looking at a full year of topics that really are just granular, but just knowing what you need to know and know more. Because I think there's so much other stuff that people get too hung up in theory, or just putting out content for the sake of putting out content, which I understand. I get that. It's part of their lead generation strategy. But so I'm working on that now. That will probably be out in the next couple of months. But I'm not in a big rush on that. I'm not looking to get something out just for the sake of getting something out. I want it to be out because I want it to be really, really good. So if you were interested, Claudia, you can just head over there and I will say hello. We can chat. I'll help you any way that I can. Very good. All right. Thank you, Claudia. All right. So let's get to it. So you're here to learn financial literacy as a business owner. Now, just a couple of things I just want to share with you right now. I know it's super easy. You're on your phones. It's near the end of the day for, I'm not even sure who is our person from the UK. It's like in the middle of the morning there, middle of the night. And Jamie. So thank you, Jamie, for showing up in the middle of the night there. But really, all I'm going to ask you specifically is please don't multitask. I know it's easy to look on your computer and, those TikTok videos are not going to watch themselves. I get it. But I'm going to be pouring into you some pretty granular stuff. And many of you identified as not numbers people. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine. You don't need to be a numbers person to understand what I'm going to show you tonight. Because if you can play solitaire, if you can play, Candyland, if you can play Go Fish, you can understand what I'm going to teach you tonight. You know why? Because accounting and bookkeeping and all that stuff really isn't about numbers as much as it is about rules. And if you can understand rules, if you understand the rules of solitaire and even the rules of Monopoly or what any other game that's out there, if you understand rules, if you understand driving rules, right, you understand numbers well enough that you can't go over 50 kilometers per hour, right? You can't go over 40 miles an hour. If you understand those rules, this is all it is. And that's all what I'm going to show you tonight. And those rules, those numbers represent things, right? So I don't want you freaking out. I don't want you thinking, oh my gosh, I gotta know like quadratic equations. No, if you know if you know how to operate a 4-function calculator, I almost said a 4-function caterpillar. I'm not sure what a 4-function caterpillar is, but a 4-function calculator, I do know what that is. That's adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. If you can handle that, you can handle this. So I'm going to show you a couple different things. We're going to get through some basics, and let's get into the agenda for tonight. So first and foremost, if anybody does know what a 4-function caterpillar is, let me know, because I don't know, but don't Google it because you're not multitasking, right? All right, so let's get to the agenda. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the Viper framework. And Claudia, this is going to be a little bit more of an overview of the framework that I wrote about in the Time Wealthy Advantage. And if I don't mention the book later on, I think there's a slide on this. I apologize because I've been going through a few different things prior to this with a few different seminars prior to this, webinars prior to this, and I'm getting my slides in my head confused. But in case I don't mention it, the Time Wealthy Advantage book that I wrote, which is the framework for the Viper methodology, which is a life and business strategic framework for about how to put together a business and a life around this framework. You can buy that. If you're outside the United States, the best way to buy that is to buy it through Amazon, just because of distribution. They can get it to you a lot faster. If you're inside the United States, probably the best bet is to get it through strategicboardroom.com. So just not here to push the book. I just want to make sure that you understood where the Viper framework and the Viper methodology came from. Then we're going to talk about the 4 core functions of business. Every business has to have these 4 core functions, and we'll talk about those. We're going to be talking about specifics of financial statements. Now, don't let your palms get sweaty from mom's spaghetti or anything like that. I just want to let you know this is easy. It's easy to understand, easy like Sunday morning. I'm going to walk you through all this, and it will be cake. On the other side, you're like, oh, I don't know why I was so worried about this. All right. Here is something for those of you who are looking for something a little bit more advanced. So for those of you, again, we're peaking around 14 people right now. Here's what's interesting is that people, they start to flame out near the end and they're like, man, this is all super basic. I get it. But if you don't understand the basics, I have to make sure you understand the basics before we get into some more of the complex stuff. There's 3 complex metrics that I want you to understand, and I want you to prevent you from growing broke. You heard me right. Growing broke. A company can grow, but it can actually be declining in profits at the same time. So that's the phenomenon I call growing broke. So I want to help you. I'm going to give you 3 tools that will help you prevent you from growing broke, and then resources at the end. So let's get to it. And my business will be online. Okay, very good, Claudia. Yep. And that doesn't change the framework here of what it is that you're trying to do. It doesn't matter if it's online, brick and mortar. It doesn't really matter what it is, or even, personal services or business services, whatever it is. Every business has to have these 4 core functions, and all of these, everything that I talked about, or I'm going to talk about tonight in terms of balance sheet, financial statements, income statements, P&L, all of that stuff, that's all going to be, it's all going to be categorized in the same way on your business, whether it's online or not. So very, very good. All right, let's get into it. So these, by the way, are all the books that I have written. The book on the top left is my first book, The Time Wealthy Investor. That was a book about how to write or how to manage your rental properties without it taking up all of your time. Therefore, the name, The Time Wealthy Investor. That book is actually out of print now, because if you look there on the very top of the book stack, kind of buried under the other ones, there was The Judge, which was my second book, and that was more along, that was again kind of a 90-page novella. And then The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0 is another book that I had written. Again, that was the updated version of The Time Wealthy Investor. Really, really proud of both of those books. And then my latest book this year, so you see the Time Wealthy Advantage there on the top right, and all those little guides underneath it. Those are all books. Those 5 books I published this year. So, and that is the Time Wealthy Advantage right there. That's my latest book. So again, if you are interested in this, head over to strategicboardroom.com, and it's right on the front. It's like buy book here or something like that. It's the very first button. You cannot miss it, right in the middle of the screen. If you were in the US, I can get that book to you. I can sign it and send it to you. Unfortunately, if you're outside the US, I just don't have a way of charging it appropriately given international shipping rates. It's just too complex. So your best bet is to order it from Amazon, and be more than happy that they will be happy to get it to you a lot faster than I can. All right, so let's get to the Viper framework. The Viper framework is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. Now, if for those of you, let me ask you here, just go ahead and type online, how many of you are either in business already, have been doing business for a little bit of time, or you've just got a business idea and you're not even really started. So like, kind of where are you at? If you've been in business, maybe give me a rough idea of how long you've been in business. If maybe you've got a business idea, side hustle, anything like that, just kind of give me an idea of what it is that you guys are working with. Because it's helpful for me to talk about this in a framework of what it is, like what your business experience is so far. And I will tell you that people, even with 10 and 20 years of business experience, have utilized this framework to really help them grow and really help them scale if that is what they wanted. So I've got a few people. Alex saying business idea currently. Vinny, ideation. Angie, a few years. Okay, very good. Marcy, in business, less than 6 months. Excellent. Anna is 1 year. Kat is ideation and completed training. Okay, perfect. So there's a few people. So some of you have got a little bit of experience. Some of you have a little bit more experience, and some of you is just an ideation. So I'm going to spend a few extra minutes in this, but this is really not the crux of what we're talking about. I just want to make sure that you guys understand this Viper framework that I'm talking about is the framework that you use for developing and creating a business and a life, not and a life that doesn't exist to serve the business. So let me get into this really quickly. So when we're talking about the Viper framework, we're talking about the V, which is vision, all right? Vision, it encompasses two things. It's both personal vision and business vision. So for those of you who were on the call a little bit ago, this will be a little bit of a review, but vision is, it's got those two things are personal vision and business vision. And the personal vision is really about specifically what is it would you want your life to look like if it wasn't defined by income generation. So it's going to ask you a primary question. Hey, where do you want to go? Claudia, where do you want to go? Osama, where do you want to go? Vivian, where do you want to go? Right? Anna, where do you want to go? And when you say like, what do you mean, where do I want to go? Where do you want to go in life? What do you want your life to look like if it wasn't defined by income generation? If you had $30 million or 40 million euros or 50 million pounds in your bank account tomorrow morning, okay, tomorrow morning, what would you want your life day to day to look like? And fine, go buy all the bougie stuff that you want and book all the vacations and stuff. But I'm talking about after all that was done and the dust settled and the newness of all the money wore off and you still had, still 80% of it left, what would you want your life to look like from day to day? That's what I'm talking about if you didn't have to worry about income generation. Now, again, if you have, even with $30 million or 40 million pounds, that's not going to give you a life that's going to allow you to live like Justin Bieber, right? You're going to have to be a good steward of your money or you will blow through it very, very quickly. And generally, within 5 years, most lottery winners are actually worse off financially than they were when they actually won the money. Why is that? Because they didn't change anything in their mind. They never had any real understanding of what they wanted their life to look like if they didn't have to worry about income generation. So I want you to think about that. What would you want your life to look like day to day? And then your business vision is going to be like, cool, that's great. How are we going to get there? And we're going to reverse engineer a business vision that's going to deliver your personal vision. All right. So here's the interesting thing, though, is that many times, and I know this is true for younger folks, too. And I don't know how many people are here. Hello, Bruno. Welcome. You are from Anápolis, Brazil. Oh, very good. Okay. So the interesting thing is I have sat in various masterminds and different trainings with people who were making 6 and sometimes 7 figures per month. And they were absolutely miserable. They were confusing fulfillment, or they were confusing achievement for fulfillment. And that was the real problem, is that they just kept stacking on achievements and just never felt very fulfilled in their lives. And the next goal that they had was another digit in their bank account, another comma that they could say that they earned that year. So what I'm saying is, this is why when you create a business vision before creating a personal vision, is that you can end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I get it. For those of you who are maybe you're in your 20s or 30s, you're like, man, let me make 50 grand a month and then I'll worry about that, that great life thing. I'm just telling you, it's an empty well. It doesn't fill up the way that you think it's going to do it. And I spent the better part of my 20s, 30s, and part of my 40s. And you're like, how old is this dude? I'm 53. And this is where you're like, wow, you don't look anywhere near 53. Thank you. I appreciate that. But no, all kidding aside, this is why I don't want you wasting time. I want you focusing on time wealth, is what you would want your life to look like, and create that personal vision. All right. So just a quick way to think about your personal vision is to think about your 100th birthday speech. So from a 100th birthday speech perspective, think about this. And I know for some of you, you're thinking, my gosh, 100 years is so far away. But if you were turning 100 years old, what would you say, right? Who would you want to be there? What would you say to the people that are in the room? And if that is a little bit too far removed, you're like, dude, I'm like 28. Like that's so far removed, I can't even think about that. I respect that. Then maybe think about a different milestone for you in your life. Maybe if you're 32 now, maybe by the time you're 40, or maybe if you're 31 now and you're like, hey, by the time my kids graduate from high school, right? Whatever that could be for you, I just want you to think about what that next milestone could be and what that speech might look like to the people that are in the room. What would you say? And, who would be there? And what would be the message that you would want people to carry outside the room when you were done? Okay. So I'm just going to I'll put the fries in the bag on this for the personal vision. But I just want you to think about this and start ruminating about this, because this is really going to matter when you're putting this business together. And of course, we talk about the 3 C's of business vision, which is core purpose, core values, and client avatar. I spent a lot of time on this in the business vision multiplier, the strategic business vision multiplier, and also the business plans 101 that I had earlier today. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I will go through this so you can understand it. But this is really, really critical, because when these 3 things are dialed in, it's really going to make an impact on your financial statements. It will make a bigger impact on your sales. It'll make your marketing investments much more efficient. So you're not just throwing up dollars and seeing what sticks. You can actually be much more effective and efficient in those certain metrics. So when I start talking about metrics, I don't want your palms to get sweaty. I'm like, oh, dude, he's starting to talk about numbers. He used a crazy word like metrics. Listen, it's okay. It's just like the speed limit. You're like, hey, look, I want, if the speed limit is, hey, I want to be, I want to make sure that my efficiency is above a certain rating. Like, I want at least 70% of the dollars that I send out to bring back money, and you're at 60%, right? That's not good, right? You want more. You want more efficiency. You want higher levels of efficiency, right? Or productivity levels, right? So this is what I'm saying is I want you to think about this in the terms of these 3 C's of business vision. So the first is core purpose. Core purpose is what specifically business are you in and what problems do you solve? And it's important that you be really, really specific on these things right here. Is understanding your business vision, what business that you're in and what problems do you specifically solve. You really have to be dialed in on this, because if you're not very clear on this, it's going to be very difficult for you to be effective in your marketing. Like if you just say, well, I'm in real estate, or I'm in IT. Okay, you're in IT. Do you build websites? You're like, no, that's not at all what I do. I actually do I do network cabling. Okay, well, that's not at all like, can you build a website? You're like, I maybe, that's not what I do though. Right? So all of a sudden, when you start getting very, very narrow in your core purpose, in fact, this is why they say the riches are in the niches. And it's very true. And don't be afraid to niche down, because when you niche down, you can start to differentiate. And differentiation is what allows you to control pricing, and it allows you to charge premium pricing. If I was like, hey, I will coach anybody on anything, on any matter, anywhere, what do you think my pricing is going to be like? It's probably going to be pretty low, right? Because you're like, dude, does this guy specialize in anything? Now, generally what I like to work with is contractors. Generally, but I have worked with a lot of different types of people. It just depends on the type of business. That's why as a strategist, I don't work with everybody. Sometimes people come to me and I'm like, I'm not sure how I can help you, to be honest. And sometimes they still want to hire me. I'm like, look, I don't want you to spend your money unless I know that I can help you, because I'm not going to charge you a low amount of money. I'm good at what I do, and I don't want to, no offense, I don't want to soak up my bandwidth, given my limited bandwidth. I don't want to soak up my bandwidth with somebody that I can't help. That doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve me, right? And I want to make sure that I'm making an impact for people. So this is where you start to get really granular in terms of what your core purpose is and what problems do you specifically solve. So for me, I save a lot of time for entrepreneurs. I save a lot of time for business owners, because I can help them with an established framework of the Viper methodology: vision, infrastructure, process, execution, reporting, and given the 4 core business functions of lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. That framework right there, it works, and it works across multiple industries. So regardless of whatever industry that you're in tonight, then just let me know, like, hey, like, if for those of you, regardless of whatever industry that you're in, this is going to work, right? And just let me know, like, hey, I don't see how this could apply to this specific business. I promise you that it will. So let's see here. So a couple people, let's see, Bruno, hello. And personal vision is, yeah, absolutely, Lauren. Thank you very much. All right, so this is the core purpose. So we're talking about 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Let's go into the core values. Core values is specifically what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business. And the core values are really important because it helps determine your company culture. And your company culture and your company brand are inextricably linked. And the thing about having a very strong company culture is so important, because it's going to attract top players that want to come to you. They want to come work with you. People who are, I mean, think about it. They're like, here in the States, People wait around the building to get into a Starbucks, right? Because of the branding that they've got, right? That's how, like, the core values that they represent and the company culture that they represent, people want to be part of that. They want to be seen as part of that. So that's important to them. So what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you no longer were in business? And keep in mind that your core values, your personal core values, are simply an extension of you, right? So the company core values, because the business is an extension of you, well, that goes the same for your company core values. So this is where I want you to stop and think about that. Like, again, what matters to you so much? Like, if you ever lost a friend because they were heading down a path that you couldn't follow, well, that likely represented a violation of a core value that was meaningful to you. Maybe it was honesty, maybe it was integrity, right? Not saying one thing and doing another. Maybe it was being, not stealing or something along those lines, right? Or just other things that you value specifically, right? A core value is something that you feel so strongly about that you are willing to act. And that is important. So defining these sorts of things now is really, really critical. And by the way, the companies that have these well-developed core values and company culture, they end up making more money. So again, for those of you who are trying to understand financial literacy, probably for the point so you can maybe make a little bit more money and maybe able to keep a little bit more money so you can understand it a little bit better, this is a great way to start. This is a great area to do this. All right, so let's get to, so we talked about core value, we talked about core, oh my goodness, it's getting late. We talked about the core values. Sorry, there was something popping up on my screen. It was distracting me. We talked about core purpose. We talked about core values. And now we are going into client avatar. Yeah, sorry. There's a little bug on my... Yeah, there we go. All right, I got it. All right, so the client avatar is specifically who you ideally want to serve. Who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? And that is really important when you break them down geographically, demographically, and psychographically. And you want to be really clear about who this person is and maybe come up with a name. And maybe it's a person, maybe it's a married couple, maybe it's a couple of some sort, maybe it's a business owner, whatever. Maybe it's a board of directors, but who is that avatar? And keep in mind, it could be a group of people, whatever that is. Could be a sports team, right? Whatever. But whatever that is, think about their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. The geographics is where they are. The demographics is who they are, right? Are they married? Are they single? Are they rich? Are they poor? Etc. Right? Do they have kids? Do they not have kids? And then the psychographics is how they think and how they buy. And when you're thinking of psychographics, I want you to think of the term ALIA, A-L-I-A, attitudes, lifestyles, interests, and goals and aspirations. This is really important when you're wanting to think about how you're going to reach them in terms of how do they view certain things? Do they have interests like sports or sports teams? What goals do they have in life? What aspirations do they have? Do they want to go back to school, right? I'm back in school right now. I'm getting my PhD in organizational psychology. And that was a goal that I've had for a long time. And I was like, man, I gotta get to it, right? I mean, it's not going to happen on its own, and I'm not getting any younger, right? So these are the sorts of things that are important because this is how you're going to reach people when it comes to your marketing, right? So this is the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar, and that is the personal vision and the business vision. So when it comes to infrastructure is the bones of the business, right? It's the desks, the chairs, the software, the websites, things like that. And it's important that you think about that when you're looking at the different methodologies, and specifically when it comes to the financial literacy piece, you have to have good software. If you're trying to do this on the back of a towel, well, you're not going to get very good data. And if you're trying to do this on an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets, it's not going to give you the data that you need. You're going to have to spend a few dollars on your infrastructure specifically. I mean, I like QuickBooks, but there's plenty of really good accounting software systems out there. Chances are you're probably going to have to pay a few bucks for them, right? QuickBooks Online is not my favorite, but it does a pretty decent job of breaking things down, both from a balance sheet perspective and an income statement perspective. I mean, it does the job, right? But I like QuickBooks Desktop. I think it's actually a better piece of software. So that is the infrastructure, right? Again, but it could also be your websites. It could be your phone systems. It could be your credit card scanner, anything that's a piece of infrastructure that has to work and has to operate for your business to function well, right? And this could be any process automations. It could be working with Monday.com. It could be Go High Level for your marketing. Anything along those lines would be the bones of the business. Okay. So we talked about vision. We talked about infrastructure. Let's talk about process. Process is how you do stuff, right? And this is things that are tactical and strategic. The tactical side of processes is just simply the stuff that you do every single day. It's your standard operating procedures, your checklists, your day-to-day activities, your opening procedures, your closing procedures, how you answer the phone. It could be how you do bank deposits, how you reconcile the banking accounts, things like that. Okay. But these are all just very boring things that no one ever really wants to talk about. When you're looking at strategic planning, on the other hand, this is where you start to think about people, purpose, and promotion. Now, I'm not going to get into super granular detail around this, but think about the infrastructure and the tactical part of process. That's your system, right? That's the battleship. That's the warship that you just built. And now we want to take that warship out of the harbor. We want to take that battleship out of the harbor. We want to go make some trouble, right? And that's what strategic planning does. So I just want you to think about that. Like you can't just have the system just sitting there with no strategic direction. Otherwise, you're just going to get battered around in the harbor up against the dock based on whatever economic winds happen to be blowing at the time. So I just want you to think about this. Like I want you to chart your course, and you do that with, of course, strategic planning. So let's get to that. That is the process part. Then the execution piece is really critical because you actually have to execute on the things that you plan on doing, whether that's in your strategic plan, your business vision, whatever. And this was a great quote: "A good plan violently executed now is better than the perfect plan executed next week." And I hear a lot of people that are those, getting ready to get ready sort of folks. And this is what you have to you have to set that stuff aside, because if you're always just getting ready to get ready, you're never really taking important action. And that's, let's face it, most plans fall apart in execution. And that is often because, my fellow entrepreneurs and business owners, we have too many priorities, and having too many priorities has the same impact as having none. So where are you at? And again, you can put your hands up if you want to, or say, yep, totally me. But how many of you have that to-do list of 75 items you're going to do today? Right? Again, I've said it before, if I've had 5 hands, I'd put them all up. But that's the thing. Like that is all of these things that are really, that you have to start to identify the individual priorities that are important to you. And you do that by identifying a daily 5. So I'm going to come back to your question in one hot second, Claudia, because I was going to mention those here in a second. But the daily 5 are up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take, which will move the needle towards your vision specifically. Now, I like 3 as a number, right? This thing today that I'm doing right now, this webinar, and which I'm also broadcasting on YouTube. And so this is part of of a strategic plan for me. Like this is part of my daily 3. And this was really important for me to get this done today, because this is going to be a needle mover for me, right? I marketed this, I put this out there, and I wanted people to basically see it. I marketed to you. You people showed up, right? That's been fantastic. You're really super chatty, which is kind of nice, because I don't get people who are super chatty on this because it's, financial and it's scary. But it's great because you guys are interacting, and that's fantastic. But I just want you to understand, like 3 is a better number for me than 5. But if I have 5, again, it better be a needle moving activity. It can't be like check email, right? Check voicemail. It does nothing, right? But picking up and calling 30 contacts, that could be one of my daily 5 or my daily 3. All right. So Claudia brought up a really good point. I'll put up on screen here, is what about Xero and Sage? I have not used them. Xero, I think, used to be Peachtree, if I'm remembering right. And so Xero is good, and I've heard of Sage too. I'm just telling you that I'm more familiar with QuickBooks, just because, again, my degree, my undergraduate degree, my bachelor's is in accounting, and that's what I'm familiar with. That's what I've used, and that's what I'm most familiar with, specifically QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Online, which I refer to as QBO. QBO is good, but it is not a substitute for QuickBooks Desktop. It does the job, and it does what it's supposed to do. It is more basic. So either one of those is fine, Claudia. And I think there are others too that some had mentioned on the last time I did this call, and was ones I wasn't familiar with. But listen, my point here is it's probably going to be something you're going to have to spend a few bucks per month, but that's going to be part of your infrastructure. And that's why I'm talking about it now, so you can budget for it as you are going forward in your business. Okay. Let's see. Someone says 75. Those are rookie numbers. Got to pump those up. 75. Are you talking about my daily my daily actions, my daily to-do list? Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's exactly it. But I will tell you that the most productive people don't have 75 things. And that's where I really that's how I was able to actually get 5 books published this year, because I wasn't distracted by all those daily 75 things. That used to be the way I would operate all the time. Oh my gosh. And you know what? If I'm not careful, it's more like 105, right? Does that bring me out of rookie status, Alex? But this is what I'm talking about, is when you can be really specific about the things that you really want to, what you really want to accomplish that are going to be needle moving activities. That's how I was able to get the Time Wealthy Advantage published. And the Time Wealthy Advantage it's almost a 300-page book. I think it's right at 300 pages. I can't remember exact page count, but it's a 300-page book. The other 4 are they're 40-page guides, which were overflows from chapters that I didn't have. I was like, well, I don't want to get rid of this information. It's really good information. And I just made them into 4 different guides, which I could also use in marketing, right? So there was a real purpose for me to come with those. And all of those have different independent ISBN numbers, ISB numbers, basically international standard book numbers. And all of them they're all classified as different books. So I'm just saying, being really dialed in on those things is what helps me be far more effective. Not trying to do 75 things, but doing 3 or 4 things really, really well for the 16 or so hours that I might be putting in at work. Okay. Like if I'm actually working that much that day. So, yes, thank you, Alex. I appreciate you, holding me accountable to that. I'll try to do better. Well, really good. So, again, the execution is up to the 5 highly specific actions. So really, for me, it's the daily 3. But again, if you have to have 5, sometimes I have to, just because I have a lot more to get done. The last component to the Viper methodology is reporting. And this comes down to lead metrics and lag metrics. Lead metrics are basically nothing more than the actions and activities that I'm doing. And the lag metrics are the results of those actions and activities. I had no control over who shows up. In fact, I have had no control over how many people stay. I had 1 person drop off so far. So and they might have come from YouTube. I have no idea. But the interesting thing is I don't have any control over who leaves. I don't have any real direct control over who stays, right? I mean, and I didn't have any direct control over who showed up to begin with. But I did have control over the actions. I did have control over how much promotion I did. And that was important. So again, if I don't get the results I want, I merely just look at the actions and activities. But that does not mean that you don't track your lag metrics, your results, because that's all based on your actions and activities. It gives your actions and activities context. So it is important that you track those things. So that is the whole Viper framework in a nutshell. Now let's look at the 4 core functions of business. That every business has to have these 4 core functions. I don't care if it's an online business or offline or bricks and mortar or service or whatever it is. All of these things have to be present in every business. And that is lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your client's journey through your company happens in that order. So I want you to think about that, is that when they are becoming aware of your company, it's because of your lead gen. And when you're having a conversation with them, it's because of the sales function. They have raised their hand and said, Alex, I'm interested in talking with you. Michelle, I'm interested in talking to you. Claudia, I'm interested in talking to you. So these are the sorts of things that I want you to start to think about, and that your customer's journey happens in that order specifically. Okay. So let me just ask you guys, in any one of these areas, right? Obviously the financial piece is one of the things that you're here to learn tonight. We're going to get to that here in just a second. But out of these, which of these do you think you're best at? Do you think you're best in your operational function? Probably most business owners would be. But if you think that you're great at lead generation, at marketing, you're like, yeah, I'm really good at posting internet videos. Okay, that's great. But keep in mind, that's a little bit different than actually getting people to convert from clicking and liking your videos and commenting on your videos to actually turning around and being willing to part with their money. So I just want you to think about that. What area, go ahead and put it in the chat. What area do you think you're strongest in out of these 4 core functions? Lead gen, sales, operations, and accounting. I want to see it in the chat. So when it comes to the 4 core functions of business, the lead generation is absolutely a critical function. Because without lead generation, look, everything in the world, everything in your business has to support your lead generation function. Because your business can be the best, most efficient business ever. It could be you could represent a paragon of virtue. Your sales technique is so dialed in that you could sell voting booths to Castro and ice to Eskimos, and you could still starve. So I just can't impress upon you enough of how important that lead generation function is. And you can never take your foot off the gas when it comes to lead generation. So let's look at what some of you are saying. Marcy is saying operations. Okay, so that is your strength. And Angie is saying marketing. Okay, very good. All right, and that's good. And I'm just going to say this. I'm just going off script here a little bit. The strength of the founder of the company almost always becomes the weakness of the business. And I have witnessed that time and time again. So if you are good in marketing, if you're good in operations, right? I happen to be good at accounting, right? Even though it's not really one of my favorite things to do. Anna says she's good in sales. Claudia, sales, face-to-face selling. Okay. And Claudia, I have a one-to-one selling. I actually have one-to-many selling webinar, and I have a one-to-one selling webinar as well. So you might want to keep open your mind or your eyes open for that when I post that again. That just give you some different ideas, right? If you guys are interested. But the thing is with this is that the strength of the founder often becomes the weakness of the business because it's almost the last thing that they let go of. So I'm just letting you know, like, just don't be afraid to let go of some of this stuff when the time comes. But and that is the next piece here is the sales piece. Like, again, I was really good at accounting and I did not want to let it go, and it became a weakness of the business. In this particular case, the lead generation leads directly into the sales function. And that is where the conversation is continued because of the lead generation function, right? It starts in lead gen and it's continued and the loop is closed in sales. The operations function, I just want to make this quick point. The effective selling is about finding solutions, not about holding people's heads underwater until they say yes. And the operations function, if you're going to get stuck, generally you're going to get stuck in operations, right? It's generally where people get stuck doing their, making the websites or putting on the roofs or baking the bread, whatever. In the accounting function, if you're going to ignore something, you're generally going to ignore the accounting function. And it usually goes something like this. Well, I've got more money in my bank account this month than last month. I must be doing okay. And I have said those exact words, and I'm just letting you know that that's a true statement for me. So I'm just letting you know that you cannot ignore the accounting function because, look, accounting function collects the money. That's important. That's really important. Probably the most important thing. The accounting function also pays the bills. I know that your vendors are really happy about that, right? And your creditors. The accounting function tracks and measures everything that happened. That's also very critical so you can actually forecast and budget and plan for what will happen, for what you want to happen. And so you can use your limited assets strategically. Okay. So let me just ask you, are all of these functions here the same skill set? No, obviously they're not the same skill set. So if Alex, I don't think Alex answered the question, but if Alex was, let's say that her strength was in lead generation and Marcy is in operations, right? Angie is in marketing, right? Those are different skill sets. I would want each one of those people on my team because realistically, I like doing this sort of stuff. I like teaching and training and bringing people into the community. That's what I really enjoy doing. I don't really want to outsource that. That's something that I've really come to enjoy. And for me, like doing the lead generation, I've got some people helping me on that. The sales piece, I've got some people helping me on that. The accounting function, I've got some people helping me with that. But I have several other businesses. I don't do anything with that stuff in the other businesses. this is why I'm even though I have a degree in accounting, I'm the least qualified person to do my own bookkeeping because I know I won't do it. I just know I won't. By the time I get to the end of the day, I have no bandwidth left. So this is why you have to start to think about those core values and hire people in and bring people in that are in alignment with those core values. So we talked about the Viper methodology, the framework. We talked about the 4 core functions. Now let's talk about financial statements. So listen, let's all take a collective deep breath. Actually, take a real deep breath because I'm going to take a drink of my tea here. Okay. Have we taken a deep breath? All right. We're going to talk about financial statements. All right. And this is in and out. This is the stuff that Michelle and Lauren helped me with. And this is the sort of thing that I want you to think about from the financial statements. There are several different types of financial statements, and this is easy. Okay. This is about rules. You can do this. Financial statements are the first 2 financial statements. You've got a balance sheet and you've got an income statement. Now, how many of you have heard of a P&L or a profit and loss? Has anybody ever heard of those things? More than likely you have. In a P&L, a profit and loss, and an income statement are all the same thing. They are all exactly the same thing. It's just it's a difference in vernacular. It's a difference in choice of language. I'm an accounting purist, right? Because my accounting people from Purdue University would roll over in their graves if they knew that I would call it a profit and loss. Every now and again I do, but I call it an income statement because that's what I learned in accounting, in the accounting program. So if you hear someone say income statement, P&L, or profit and loss, they are all the same thing. They are not different. Okay. So I just want to make sure that you understand when I use those different phrases. What if you're a sole trader? Do you mean like a sole proprietor, like you're doing it by yourself? I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking that question in the context of the 4 core functions? Yeah, be a little bit more specific in your answer or your question, Claudia. I'm happy to answer that for you. Are you talking about trading stocks? I'm not sure what you're referencing. So let's talk first and foremost about a balance sheet. Balance sheet is, it's made up of 3 components, 3 basic components. And those components are broken down into 3 main ways, right? So you've got assets, what is owned. Your assets is what the company owns. You've got your liabilities, which is what the company it owes to others. Okay. It's the balance of what is owed to others. And the equity is the difference between your assets and your liabilities. So if you have $1 million in assets and $100,000 in liabilities, you've got $900,000 of equity. And that is basically what again, if you were to sell all your assets, pay off your liabilities, that is what would be worth on paper. Okay. So that's what I want you to think about from this perspective. And again, these are the balances on the balance sheet. It's a list of all the balances. So I just want you to think about that. It's like, what's the balance in your checking account, right? What's the balance in your accounts receivable? What's the balance in, right? So we'll get to all this here in just a second. So this is, and I just want you to think about this. This is for one moment in time. So your balance sheet represents one moment in time for what the balances are. And this will make sense more here in a second. The income statement, or P&L, is also made up of 3 things. And that is your revenues, your expenses, and your net income. Revenues, expenses, and your net income or profit, right? So revenues is your sales. It's how much if you sold your widget for $10,000 or 20,000 pounds or 40,000 euros or whatever, right? That's your revenues. That's what your sales are. Then you take out your expenses, right? Your wages, your marketing expenses, what you pay those things out, right? Those are your expenses. And what's left over is your profit. Now your income statement is over a period of time. So that might be 1 week or 1 month or 1 quarter or 1 year. Okay. So that is generally those are the main broken down, very simple parts of your income statement. So let's take a look at your balance sheet. Okay. So Claudia is saying yes. I'm not sure what you mean by yes. if you're a stock trader, I guess. So the 4 core functions are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. Lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. If you're just a trader, there's really no business. You're just trading off the value of other companies' equity. You're just a speculator, right? There's no lead generation that's involved, right? It's not really a true business. I mean, in my mind, I think what we're talking about is where you're generating leads. You're not really trading anything. It's no different than, you're not having to go out and find a buyer for a stock, right? Because you're already in a liquid market. So you're really just kind of trading and speculating, which is not really necessarily a business in my mind. I'm looking more of a business in true business functions where there is marketing, there is an actual selling process, there is an operational and fulfillment function, basically where you're producing something, whether that's in the form of personal services or an actual product. So that to me is what that is. Sole trader in Ireland is a term for a single business owner on a certain tax bracket. Oh, okay. So we would call it a sole proprietor. I apologize. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Kat. Okay. That's what I thought you might meant. A sole proprietor is what we would refer to that in the United States. I thought you might mean that, but sometimes I get people who trade equities on this and they think that is something different. So my apologies. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm picking up what you're putting down. So yeah, a sole proprietor, this is all the same thing. It's not going to be any different if you're doing, if you have this structure as a LLP or a limited liability partner or a limited partnership or whatever else it is that you may have. This is all the same. Every business is going to have those four core functions: lead gen, sales, operations, accounting. Okay. So, very good. Yep. Thank you for clearing that up, Kat. I do appreciate that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to get myself moved down here so you can see me way down at the bottom here for just a second. Now this I actually excerpted from the book, The Time Wealth, The Advantage. This is on page 265 for those of you who have the book. But this is a very basic example of a balance sheet. And you'll see the assets at the top there. You've got cash, accounts receivable, liabilities in the middle, and then your equity or your total equity down at the bottom. So let's walk through what each of these lines mean. We're going to start at the very top. Okay, so you see the top there where it says assets and cash balance and all that, total assets. That's what we're going to go to on this screen right here. So what we're looking at here is at the very top, these go from most liquid, the most convertible or most quickly convertible to cash, versus least liquid. Okay. So what that means is that I can go to my checking account and convert that to dollars or pounds or whatever. This is universal, by the way. This is across borders. So this isn't just in the United States. This is universal. It follows what's called GAAP, sometimes called GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles. And that is where you can convert this. Let's say that you got $10,350 in Chase checking account or 10,350 pounds in Barclays, right? Either way, it doesn't really matter where you're keeping that is, but it's very highly liquid, and it's most liquid to least liquid. So when you're looking at this, then you're going to go down to accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is the amount of money that your company is owed. Okay, and that's an asset for you, right? If someone owes you $100,000, that becomes an accounts receivable. So basically what that means is you're selling your whatever it is on credit, and you're extending people credit to say, okay, hey, can I pay you in 30 days or can I pay you in 45 days or whatever? This is very typical for businesses. So accounts receivable is $101,275. Your vehicles are listed at what's called book value. Book value means what you paid for it, not what's the registered book value, like Kelley Blue Book value or things like that, where you get valuations of them. But this is specifically listed at book value that you purchased it at. Okay, so again, maybe you got a great deal on it or whatever, but it's listed at $29,970. And this is important. And what I don't have on here is what's called accumulated depreciation. I'm not really going to get into that, but that's basically writing down the value of the asset over a period of time. So I'm not going to get into that, but that would be something that you would see as listed under each one of the physical assets, right? The ones that are the property, plant, and equipment. So the longer term assets. The real estate or the warehouse, let's say you have a warehouse that's worth $275,000. Their total assets, all of these things added together, are $417,000. Okay, so that is your total assets. And again, that's representative of the top section there of your balance sheet. Again, these are all the balances from a snapshot in time. Let me make this quick point here, and so I'll bring myself back up. Let's say, for argument's sake, that I went in the morning and talked to my bookkeeper and said, hey, can you print me out a balance sheet? And she prints me out a balance sheet. Here you go. And she gives me the balances. And she goes all day and she's writing checks and paying bills and taking in, money and doing all the things. Okay. And I have her print a balance sheet at the end of the day. My balance sheet will be different based on the transactions that she did. So I want you to understand that it is truly a snapshot in time, and that any transaction that happens will potentially alter your balance sheet if it's a balance sheet transaction, right? Which could be cash balances or accounts receivable or things like that. But it will also alter the income statement for that period of time as well. But I'm just letting you know that the balance sheet, because it's a snapshot in time, generally you're going to want to run this at the end of the period that you're running for the income statement. So this will make sense when I talk about the income statement here in a second. But I just want you to understand, this is for a snapshot in time. This is the total balances in the accounts. So in other words, if I took in money, my accounts receivable might go down, but my cash balance might go up, right? You see how that works? All right, let me get my giant dome out of the way here again, so you can see what this looks like. All right, so we've got assets. Let's get into the liabilities. The liabilities is the middle section, right? And I kind of put both the sections there in their liabilities and equity. But you got a credit card balance. Again, it goes from the lowest short-term debt to the longest-term debt. So you got a credit card balance, say with Chase. You've got accounts payable. This is a vendor that you owe some money to. Again, they're selling to you on credit, so you're going to owe them some money. You got Wells Fargo. You got a loan on your van. And then you got a mortgage through Citibank for $105,000, right? So the total liabilities added up are $189,180, and the total equity, the assets minus the liabilities, equals $227,000. So conceivably, if you took all your assets and liquidated them and sold them all off and paid off all of your debts, you would be left with $227,000, or just under $228,000. Okay, makes sense? So that is really important when you're thinking about the balance sheet. Now, again, few companies are actually valued this way, but I just want to let you know that that is a very basic balance sheet that I put together for you. If you're looking at your income statement, remember your income statement is made up of three things as well: your revenues, your expenses, and your net income. So let's look at, again, we're going to look at the very top of the income statement. So the income statement, you've got revenues, you've got product sales and service sales, which equals your total sales of $114,000. You see the 65.8% and 34.2% off to the side. We're going to come back to that, but that is a percentage of sales. So I'm going to make a bigger point of that here in a little bit, but the 75,000 is 65.8% of 114. All I did was divide 75,000 by 114 to come up with 65.8. And that's going to be really important because later on, if I know like what elements are more profitable, I'm going to say, well, I want to do more product sales and service sales, but that means I'm going to be more profitable, right? Well, we're going to come back to the percentage of sales method here in just a second. When you're looking at expenses, your expenses are the middle section there, which leads to your net income. So this is where you have your raw materials of $34,000, your insurance expense of $5,150, et cetera, and then you've got your total expenses, which equals $96,000, and your net income of $17,680. So that's your total sales minus all of your total expenses, which equals $17,680. So let's pretend that this is over 1 month, okay? And it could be over any period of time. This could be over 1 month, it could be 1 day, but generally it's over a period of time. So if I was going to put these things, together, I would want the end of the month for the balance sheet, right? So let's say it was November 30th. I would want 11/30 balance sheet printed with the 11/1 to 11/30. So on November 1st through November 30th income statement. That way I would get a view of the entire month, and then I would get a snapshot of the balance sheet at the end of that period. So that is why that's really important. So I've got some questions coming in. Man, you guys are burning up the questions here. That's really good. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. What do you think about using credit card money as capital? Please explain how it will be again, and how to manage the 5 C's of credit. So here's the thing. To answer that question, using credit card debt can be really tricky, and I'm going to tell you why. And this is something because credit card debt specifically has, yes, it has high interest, but it's not the interest that's the problem. You're like, what do you mean the interest isn't the problem? The high credit card debt isn't or the high interest isn't the problem. It's the payment per thousand. It's the payment per thousand. It's something called a loan constant, And a loan constant is, let's say for argument's sake that I borrowed $100,000 on a mortgage, okay? $100,000 on a mortgage, and I borrowed $100,000 on a credit card, okay? The minimum payment for a mortgage is roughly $8 per thousand. So my minimum payment on that $100,000 on that mortgage is going to be about $800. Conversely, if I'm looking at the minimum payments, just the minimum payments on a credit card, okay, and that loan constant is somewhere around 24% of the total outstanding balance, between 24 to 36%. So let's say it's 30%, right? That's $30,000 that you have to pay on the minimum payments over the course of a year, right? So that's 30%. It's unbelievably insane. If you don't believe me, take the amount of that's on your credit card statement, annualize that number, and then divide it by the balance. It's unbelievably expensive money. That's the problem, is the amount of money it costs per thousand. It's not the interest rate. The interest rate just determines the length of your prison sentence, right? The main thing is that it's so expensive. It's such expensive money because of the minimum payments. That's why if you have an opportunity for an amortizing loan, which will keep the payments low, that's the biggest issue that you can. That's the bigger issue that can help avoid that. Manage the 5 C's of credit. I'm not sure what you mean by 5 C's of credit. I didn't say anything about 5 C's of credit. I will be producing and selling makeup regarding your point on lead. Okay, perfect. Very good. So you do have a product, Claudia. Very good. How often should a business owner check their balance sheet? So Anthony, that's a great question. I like to track my cash. We're going to come back to this in a second, but on the balance sheet, this is something from a balance sheet perspective that I want to be meeting with my bookkeeper or someone who's doing my books. Minimum, I would want to be looking at that monthly. And the reason for that is because the balance sheet would be tracked at the end of each period, right? So the balance sheet, the checking account should be reconciled, the credit card account should be reconciled, and that would close that period, right? So you can't make any more adjustments, can't make any more transactions during that period, right? Or anything previous. So that locks the balance sheet, or locks the financial statements in. At that point in time, I would want to see the financial statements, which would be the income statement for that period. So again, for that month, and at the end of that month, I would want to see the balance sheet, right? So again, using November 1st to November 30th, and then the November 30th balance sheet, right? So the income statement for November 1st for November 30th, balance sheet for November 30th. Okay, is that making sense? Because I would want to see that often. Let's see. Okay. I'm not sure. I didn't mention anything around 5 C's of credit. Character, capital, collateral, and conditions. Okay. That's good. I don't know. I did not know that. The 5 C's of credit are character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I have no idea. The thing is, for me, and that's great. So just understand that I was an underwriter for a bank for a number of years, and I'm not going to look at any of those things. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going to look at the 5 C's of capital. Like, I'm not looking at character or capacity, capital. I'm looking at cash flow. It's interesting that cash flow is not on there because cash flow, when I'm looking at a loan, that's everything related to your ability to repay, right? So I'm not sure the context of the credit. I don't know if they're asking, like, should someone be extended credit or not? But in my particular case, when I was a commercial loan analyst, I would specifically and almost exclusively look at cash flow. So How much debt should a business have and take on? How do you measure that? So that's a good question. It's all going to depend on cash flow. To me, and again, it's going to depend on the cash flow and the nature and structure of debt. And these are really, really good questions, a little bit beyond the scope of this session. But the main thing about this is managing that debt load is so incredibly important because most businesses do not manage their debt well. And the reason why is because they don't manage their cash well, which actually leads us to one of the first metrics we're going to be talking about here in just a second is managing specifically the amount of cash that you have that's on your balance sheet. Really, really good questions, guys. Thanks so much for hanging in there. Yeah, these are really good. So, let's see. So you might be thinking, well, why do these financial statements matter? What is it like? Again, why should you care? What does any of this actually mean? Well, let's get to the specifics around avoiding, like, hey, where is all my cash going and why am I growing broke? And what you guys were talking about in terms of specifically what kind of debt load should I carry? This is going to depend on the type of business. I was a very heavy real estate business, and that's where most of my money comes from is real estate. My debt load is going to look very different from someone who's maybe in manufacturing. Well, why is that? Because real estate was very capital intensive. In order to get into real estate, I had to get a lot of someone else's capital. Now, my debt load is a lot lower because, again, I've been paying on these things forever and I have a lot of stuff paid off. But my thing is, like, the capital stack or the capital structure basically is really going to be different from one industry to the next, from one business to the next. Okay. So this is going to be really, really critical. So the growth, when you're looking at growing broke, growth planning is, you cannot be strategic if you don't know your numbers. You just can't. And you have to avoid growing broke. And what happens is there's three key metrics that we're going to get into here, right? You've got profit margin percentage, cash balance history, and cash as a percentage of sales. We're going to look at profit margin percentage first and foremost. When we're looking at the income statement, so again, if you're looking here where you see the income statement down here, you're going to look at that column there on the right-hand side. That is cash as a percentage of sales. And when you look, remember what I was talking about here, where those numbers are on the right-hand side? Those are your cash as a percentage of sales numbers. And those are really, like I mentioned earlier, it's really important because this is how you can help track your most important revenue lines. Whether, like, you're saying, hey, look, I know we have really good margin in our product sales because we sell them for at least 3 or 4 times more than what we paid for them. We want to get as much as we can in product sales versus service sales, right? Just as an example. Well, when you're looking here, I want you to look at the bottom right where you see that number that's circled. That is your net profit margin percentage. And that is what I want you to be on like a freaking Band-Aid. So when you're going through this stuff, this is really, really critical. Because when you're tracking your profit margin percentage, I'm just going to take you through this very, very simple example. Let's pretend that you have $10 in revenues and you have $8 in expenses and you have a net profit of $2. 2 divided by 10 is 20%. So your net profit margin percentage is 20%. Okay. So that's great. But let's pretend that because of inflation or whatever, your expenses go up $1. Okay. So your expenses go up $1, but you want to maintain that net profit of $2. So what you do is you raise your prices by $1. Okay. So you raise your prices $1. So your revenues are 11, your expenses are 9. Now your net profit stays at 2%, but look what happens to the net profit margin percentage. 18.2. Congratulations. You are now less efficient at keeping dollars. Your dollars, you're working just as hard, but the money that you're keeping is less. It's less valuable. So in other words, if you were actually going to maintain your profit margin percentage, you should have raised your revenues to $11.20, which should have given that expenses of $9, which have given you a net profit of $2.20, which have maintained your net profit margin percentage of 20%. This is why companies, and look at companies on the stock markets. I don't care if you're watching the FTSE or the Dow Jones or S&P 500 or whatever. That is why during periods of high inflation that companies tend to do pretty well. Right now, can't be crippling inflation, but when companies during an inflationary environment, this is why they do well, because their raw number at the bottom is actually higher, even though from a net profit margin percentage, they probably haven't changed very much. So this is why, if you're not paying attention, this is one of the reasons. There's multiple reasons of how a company can grow broke, but your revenues actually grew, but you're now less efficient at keeping dollars. So that same $2 is not going to buy the same amount because it's worth less than the $2 when it was under 20%, right? Because of inflation. So this is how a company can grow broke. So you have to pay attention to your net profit margin percentage. If you take nothing else away from tonight, this is what you have to pay attention to, okay? So the other things I just want you to pay attention to is, we talked about net profit margin percentage. Let's talk about cash balance history and cash as a percentage of sales. This is a pretty straightforward metric. It's just tracking your cash balance. I don't remember who asked the question, but specifically like how often. Oh, it was Anthony. How often should a business owner check their balance sheet? To be quite honestly, like this is a question of checking my cash balance versus tracking my cash balance. I want to know at the end of each month, and I don't care if you track it every week or every day, but I mean, if you're going to track it, that doesn't mean you log in and check it. Like, that means you write it down and you track it and you can see the trend of it going. I think daily is probably too often, but if you're knowing your cash balance, and I'm just telling you that most businesses don't have near enough cash. Most businesses run very, very lean on cash. And I will tell you that when you're outside of growth phase, maintaining your cash is one of the most important things that you have to do. Bill Gates, he was like maniacal about tracking his cash and making sure he didn't run out of cash. And I'm just telling you that most businesses, and this was tracked by Jim Collins in the book Great by Choice, is that most businesses had 3 to 10 times more cash on their balance sheets than their industry counterparts, the ones that were anywhere that had massive gains over their competitors. So I'm just saying, like, having cash, I would want to track. This is a key metric that I would want to track. There's one other metric that I'd want to track. I'm going to put myself down in here just a second so you can see this a little bit easier. All right. And this one is the last one, and we're going to put the fries in the bag for tonight. But this one is cash as a percentage of sales. So cash as a percentage of sales, you're going to need to take two different numbers. This is easy. It's not hard. But let's say, for argument's sake, that you have a 1 month business cycle, meaning that most of your money comes in and goes out when one period of time, which is generally 1 month. Okay. So this would be a balance sheet at the end of the month. And I'm going to take that number right up there, which is the cash number right up there, $10,350. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my income statement and I'm going to take my total sales number, right? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take those two numbers and divide them, right? I want 10,000 divided by 114. So my 10,000 in cash divided by 114. Again, simple math, which is 8.7%. Well, you might be thinking, is that good? Is it bad? Well, it depends. It just depends on the nature of your business. And again, I'm also going to track these numbers. So you have to be thinking like, well, what does this actually mean? Well, cash as a percentage of sales just means how much cash, if my cash went to zero tomorrow, how much cash could I float in operations? Well, as of this, you don't really have much cash to float at all, right? So in other words, you could be broke generally within a week if you don't have enough cash. So this is why I'm saying this. For me, I would want at least 1 to 2 months, if not more. I would want that a multiple, probably like 400 or 500% in my mind is where I would want my cash at when I'm looking at these numbers. Especially, that gives me like 4 or 5 months worth of revenues. Now, again, are most businesses doing anywhere near that? No, generally what they're doing is they're either leaning on credit cards, which again, we talked about, really expensive debt because of loan constant, or they're leaning on lines of credit or things like that. Okay. But this is where, again, tracking this number and making sure that that number is always going up. Now, you got to keep in mind is that the number going up might be a function, not just because cash is going up, but that it could also mean that sales are declining, right? Because that's a function of that number. So when it comes to this, when it comes to growth planning, you cannot be strategic if you don't know your numbers, and you have to avoid growing broke. So a couple quick things. Obviously, we're just talking about this. Know your numbers, track your numbers. This is actually kind of a fun story. We'll just tell you this real fast. But this picture here is from a guy who was he was actually robbing a bank, And it was interesting because you can see his face clear as day, right? This was back in 1995, and this was going on in Pittsburgh. And the guy was robbing banks with no attempt to disguise his face. Didn't have a mask or anything on. And what was interesting was they caught them a couple days later, and they're like, I don't understand like how you caught me. And the police were like, well, we got your photo. He's like, yeah, but I had the juice on. What he did was he put lemon juice on his face. Convinced, he and a partner put lemon juice on their face, convinced that the lemon juice would make them invisible. Okay? So much so that that two researchers by the name of Dunning and Kruger, they had to study this. They said this can't be true. So what they did, I'm going to take myself all the way off here. So what they did was they came up with this graph recognizing that people have confidence levels on the left and they have competence levels on the right. And basically everybody starts out every endeavor down here. They don't know much, right? But you're not super confident, but you start down there. And as time goes on, very quickly, you get very, very confident, right? But you don't know much. You don't have much competence, but you do have a lot of confidence until it peaks at what they called Mount Stupid. And this is where you start to realize that you don't know what you don't know. Okay? If we've ever been there, like I've been there a few times in my businesses, right? And then you start this very rapid descent down into the valley of despair. And this is where many people stop. They get this shiny object syndrome. They realize, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. But if they keep at it and they keep adding to their information, they keep adding to their competence, they keep training, they keep trying, right? You start up that slope of enlightenment until you eventually get to the plateau of sustainability up at top. My point about all of this is to have a support system. And that's important to obviously have a community or whatever it is, keep training. You guys spent a better part of an hour and a half on this call tonight. I really appreciate you guys. You guys were asking really, really good questions. What I'd like to do is, if you would like to join me in the strategic boardroom, this is the community there on School. Right now, like I mentioned earlier, there is no cost to join that. So if you want to join that there, I just went ahead and put that link in there. Let me see if I can answer some of your questions before we land the plane for tonight. Let me get out of this. Let's see. Producing and selling makeup. Okay. Let's see. Using credit card funds. How much debt should a business owner have? We discussed that one. Are there strategies on managing cash flow since it's something you... hold on a second. Let me get that up on the screen. Anthony, are there strategies on managing cash flow since it's something you can't control versus business expenses? Strategies on managing cash flow. It's going to depend on honestly, it's going to depend on the industry. It's going to depend on the business. There are lots of strategies for managing cash flow, but I'd have to know more about your business. But really, probably the best thing about managing cash flow, the best thing that I can tell you is that lead generation, like that can never, ever end. The minute you take your foot off the gas in lead generation is when it's when the boat is going to start to slow down. So managing cash flow, like there are techniques around cash flow management and revenue management. And, but it's just going to depend. Like if you had an Airbnb business, there would be different strategies than having a manufacturing business. So, and unfortunately, without more context, I can't answer your question more granular than that. But yes, that absolutely is important. And realistically, controlling expenses is important. But I would much rather focus on sales and revenues than in driving that activity than spending, and obsessing about cutting and shaving off 0.1% of expenses, because you're going to get more juice from the squeeze by additional revenues than you are by cutting expenses. Really good question. So Alexandria, I must have said something really funny. Okay. And can you just confirm? Hold on a second. Okay, Kat is asking the question. Can you confirm the cash flow formulas? Profit margin percentage is net profit divided by total revenues. That is correct. So basically, you're going to take that net profit. So really, again, simple math. You have $100,000 in sales. You have a net profit of $10,000. It's 10,000 divided by 100,000. That is a 10% profit margin. Very good. Yep, you got it. Cash as a percentage of sales. Cash is a percentage of sales. Okay, on that one, it is cash, your cash balance for the end of the period on your balance sheet. So in other words, let's pretend you've got an income statement from November 1st to November 30th, right? So you got your total sales for that period. Let's say that that's $100,000 in sales. Let's say you have cash on your balance sheet at the end of that period. So you're looking at the end of that period, again, November 30th, okay? Remember, it's a snapshot in time. So you have 10,000 in cash. You have total sales over that period of 100,000. It's cash as a percentage of sales. So 10,000 divided by that 100,000, it would be 10% cash as a percentage of sales. So it just literally means cash as a percentage of sales. Total cash in my bank account as a percentage of sales. Okay, so good questions, Kat. Anna, this was very informative. Appreciate the effort you have made. Yeah, absolutely, Anna. You guys were asking really good questions. My gosh, I don't usually I'm so geeked out right now. Like my heart is so happy. I never get to answer questions at this granular level. Yeah, Kat, got it. Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you all for sticking around. Man, no one left. Guys, I don't know that I've ever seen this in this class. You guys were really, really good. I know, really amazing crowd, truly. Well, thank you all so very much. I would love to see you guys in the boardroom if you guys are interested. If not, it's totally fine. But I've got more trainings coming up tomorrow. Let's see what's on the book for tomorrow. I've got Marketing Magic at 3 o'clock tomorrow, and the Strategic Business Growth Multiplier is tomorrow night. So at the same time at 6:30. So if you would like to check out those you can register for those on Eventbrite. And then Wednesday, I've got Strategic Planning for Business Owners. That is on Wednesday at 3. And then I'm taking Thursday off because if I don't, my bride will throw me out with all the stuff. She wants to spend some time with it. That's not a bad thing. And then January 2nd is your networking not working, networking for business owners. So that is what I have, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging around. Took a lot of notes, sir. Excellent. Vinny, you got some really good questions. And Anthony too. So thank you, Jamie. Thanks so much. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging around, and I will see you guys in the boardroom. Have a great rest of your day. See you next time. Thank you, Alex.